I was hoping we could start by maybe you telling the story of when you realized you were gay and what that meant to you. And then if you could share, the getting kicked out of school story, if you don't mind.
Sure.
And then, I think it's pretty powerful in understanding, your superhero origin story, if you will, your Professor X, perhaps. And then we can move on to some of the amazing work you're doing and everything else.
Yeah, great. Love it. Okay, cool. Thanks. Yeah, that's fascinating. I wish I could hear more of your story. So I knew I was gay when I was 10. I was in the bathroom by myself, and I knew I was something else earlier than that, but by the time I was 10 years old, I realized, oh, the word gay is what is going on with me. Like, that's what's happening in my life. And that was like a really dreadful experience because I was raised Baptist. So gay people were abominations, right? God didn't love these people. They weren't going to inherit the kingdom. They were perverted. All these really horrible messaging about, people that I was a part of. So I, just decided in that moment it wasn't even a decision. It was more like a realization. I'm going to have to hide this for the rest of my life. No one can know, oh God, am I ever going to...
At 10, you had that realization.
Yeah, it was,
Wow.
yeah, I was pretty young. But I had been trained for so long up to that point around how to perceive and relate to gay people. They weren't really people. They were like people who had a problem, like this wasn't an orientation or an identity. It was like an affliction people had. So that just like very much informed my, the experience of realizing that that's who I was. Anyway, so for the next 8 years, I didn't really ever tell anyone, but I fooled around with my best friend from 12 to 15. He and I were just like,
hey,
yeah, we just like fooled around. But I was in love with him. It wasn't just like oh, I'm horny. It was like oh my gosh, this is like the best thing I've ever experienced kind of thing. I don't think that was his experience, but, anyway, so that was like a deep, shameful secret I carried. And I was always heavily involved in church. And from like early teen years upward, I was often in a leadership role of some kind, whether unofficially or officially. And so that was like a lot of pressure. And, I understood the expectations and the protocol and all the things. And so I was a walking contradiction to what we valued and whatever. So I just was playing this like secret chameleon game for a long time, which is exhausting. Living in the closet is not a way to live. And so by the time I was 18, this is funny telling this story to an atheist, but when I was 18, I was at a church, I was at the church I was going to, and during Sunday school, it was like a college age Sunday school, somebody shared this story of a gay guy who was playing the main role of a missionary film for a Christian movie. And he decided to come out to the producers and the director and whatever while they were shooting because he felt like they deserved to know. They gathered and prayed and felt like God wanted this gay guy to play the role. So this girl tells this story in our Sunday school class, and I was not expecting this, but it was the first time in my life I'd ever heard of God being gracious or kind or compassionate to a gay person. I had only ever heard that God hated these people, God was going to throw them in hell, they had no place in the family of God, right? So this is the first time I'd ever even heard the notion that that was possible, and it ruined my life in the best way, but it like fractured my concept of reality.
Right.
On some level, which sounds dramatic, but it was. And so like an hour later, I'm in the main adult service. We're singing the same songs we sing every week, right? I know these songs. I don't need to look at the lyrics. I can sing it. But this time something was different, and I started having, I don't know how else to describe it. The verbiage is going to be awkward, but like a spiritual experience. I started like having a very deeply profound, what I would describe as an encounter with God, right?
Right.
Was
I think it's
how I
better
would
than having like a panic attack. I'm sure so many other kids went through that and they just kind of like just shut down.
Yeah, totally, for sure. Oh my gosh, yeah. And I wasn't expecting this. This wasn't something I thought was going to happen. It wasn't something I was looking for. I didn't know this was even possible. But I started having this profoundly deep, moving, connected experience with this idea of who I didn't even realize I thought God was. And there was some like meaningful exchange that happened there. And then 8 months later, it happened again. This time it was even more dramatic. But in that experience, I heard God, if you will, not heard because I didn't hear it with my audible ears, right? But like inside of myself, there was communication. And they said to me that they wanted me to be this way. And I knew that that wasn't allowed. I knew this was very unbiblical, right? It was very non-Christian for God to say that to me. But it was also very clear that that's what they said. So it was, I also was like, oh, I can never tell anybody that this happened. No one's going to believe me. but it actually changed my life. Like I felt such a profound reconciliation and peace and like knowing with God from that experience. Like I think for that first time in my life, in that moment, I finally got to stop hating myself for being gay. I got to like accept like,
Wow.
oh, you know what? I don't know how and why, but like God and I
How
are
old were
good.
you at that time?
I was 18.
Okay. Yeah, because you speak a lot in that YouTube video about these conversations that you have with your perception of God and all these things, and the way that I understood it is that like, I would feel like that you're talking to your, I think we have two sides, right? We have the reptilian brain, we have our emotional selves, and I feel like maybe you were talking to like your emotional self, your inner child that had been ignored for so long and told that his needs were important, his feelings were important, like the only thing important was God. And then as soon as you saw one crack in the armor of this pageantry of Christianity, that inner child just grabbed onto it and it was like, Mike, it's okay. It's okay. So I'm sure that I can't even imagine what that feeling was like. I'm sure like spiritual is probably the best way to, describe it.
Yeah, yeah, totally. So that's fascinating. I love hearing your perspective and how you'd interpret all that. It's so interesting.
And after that, I guess, just briefly, because it does sound like quite a emotional part. Like I would just like people to hear about how you were treated in school when you were kicked out. Do you mind telling that story? It's okay if you don't want. Like,
no, yeah, I don't mind.
okay.
No, I don't mind.
Okay.
So fast forward a few years, I ended up in a ministry school in California. This actually like renowned charismatic ministry school. So I did first and second year there, but my second year, skipping all the drama and the details, basically, I had a friend who was very close to me. I kind of put her in like a mentor role in my life. And anytime that they had some kind of ministry opportunity where they wanted to like pray for gay people who were struggling with being attracted to the same sex, like God would heal them, like it was time for them to get whole and to experience, being restored and redeemed and becoming straight and all this stuff. And I just never felt safe or compelled or interested in participating in any of it. I absolutely wanted to be healed at that point. I wanted to change. I wanted to be straight.
Okay.
I wanted that, out here, ignoring the story I'm telling you about my encounters with God or, all that.
Well, it's a direct opposition of everyone in your life.
Right.
Like
exactly.
that's an enormously thing to overcome.
Right. Seriously. So I wanted to fit in. I wanted to honor my leaders and my culture and my tradition and my religion. I wanted to be the right version of what I was supposed to be in the place that I identified with or whatever. But none of those invitations ever felt safe or like fitting for me. So I just didn't engage. And she kept getting really mad at me for not pursuing my healing or not subjecting myself to the opportunities that were being provided to me or whatever.
Wow.
So anyway, at the end of the school, she basically came to me a week before school was going to end of second year. And she was like, I'm tired of hearing people talk about you and girls having crushes on you and thinking that something could happen when I know nothing can happen. I'm tired of pretending like I don't know any better. You're not addressing this. You're not fixing it. You're not doing anything to change this. So I just want you to know, like, the next time something like that comes up, I'm not going to lie for you. I'm not going to pretend like this is fine or true. And I was like, basically outing me, right? And I told her, like, wow, that sucks. I don't think that's your place. Thanks for telling me. I'm glad to at least know what you're thinking.
Yeah, but you suck.
But yeah, like that's not your business. Like, so I don't think that's appropriate. And so she left, and I went to my room and just laid on my bed, and then like these hot, random tears just were coming out of my face, and I was not even connected to my emotions when that was happening. I just knew like something dramatic, something deep that I didn't understand was happening. It was terror and like also like the threat of freedom, like at the same time. So it was like a mixed emotion of like, this could ruin my life, but also my life kind of sucks in this place. So like, do I want my life to be ruined? Like maybe this is like going to be helpful. I don't know. And I didn't have like resolve or like clarity about that. I just had emotion coming out. Right. And then like the next day, my pastor that I was assigned to in school pulled me into a meeting randomly and just wanted to check in, which was weird because I tried to meet with him a few times throughout the year and he'd never responded to my texts or emails. So I just kind of assumed he was too busy and let it go. But I wanted to talk to him about, the shame that I was carrying from my middle school sexual adventures and like my hidden sexual desires and whatever. Never responded to me. But then at the end of the year, the day after she talked to me, he pulls me into a meeting and starts asking me about my experience at school and how's the year going. And then at
How
the end of the,
convenient.
and you think in hindsight, you're like, Mike, come on, bro, like put it together. How did you not see this coming? But I was still so naive and like,
Sure.
I just believed the best about the whole environment and the leaders, especially. Like, of course, they would never do anything to hurt me or like they wouldn't prioritize other things over my well-being. Like that wouldn't happen. Anyway, so
Well,
at the end of the meeting,
you've been gaslighted for your whole life.
Yeah.
So it's like, how do you don't just switch on hit a switch where you're like, oh, all of these people now don't have my best interest in heart when you thought you did. I don't know. I don't think there's any way for you to have seen through that until the moment that, seems like you did.
Yeah, thanks. It actually took me a while, even after some of these experiences, to recognize what was happening, which is embarrassing, but true. Because, I was a diehard, committed, loyal, submitted, what they would say, a son of the house. That's the language we would have used. And now I just, like, cringe at, a lot of this. But anyway, at the end of the meeting, he was like, so are you dating anybody? Are you interested in anyone? Are there any girls that like pulling your interest? And I was like, this is such a random what? I was like, no, actually, I'm in a place where I'm working on myself and I need to not be dating anybody right now. And then I told him like, I actually wanted to talk to you about this part of my life this year. I'm hoping maybe at some point we could get together. I'd love to talk to you about this or whatever. Anyway, a few days later, it's like literally the last day of school. They have this knighting ceremony. So the two like main guys of the school have swords and they like knight you, right? Ceremoniously. Right. And so I'm like in line waiting with my friends to go get knighted, and I get a text from my pastor. He's like, hey, are you here today? I need to talk to you today. And I was like, whoa, yeah, I'm about to get knighted. He's like, find me after. I was like, okay. So I go get knighted. I go through this whole like tunnel and whatever. At the end of it, he pulls me out randomly out of this like experience that was happening. We didn't talk to anyone. He just like whisked me upstairs and took me to the guy who's in charge of all of second year into his office. It was just the two of us. And I was like, oh, something's wrong. This is so weird. It's the atmosphere of this whole exchange was really awkward and like intense. And so I sat down. He sits me down. He's like, Mike, I've been hearing disturbing reports about you. And I was like, what? And I'm like immediately thinking like, okay, did I not turn in a homework assignment? Like, did I like forget something? Like, what am I missing? I was like genuinely so caught off guard. I was not expecting him to say that. I didn't know what he meant. Right. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, I think you know what I mean. And I was like, what? And I'm realizing like, oh my God, this is a very different conversation than I could have anticipated. Right. What is he talking about?
And it's even worse because it's passive aggressive.
Totally. Yeah, this was so terribly handled. I was not set up for success. I was not looked after or cared for in this process. I was interrogated and yeah, it was awful. And so I like racked my brain, and then it like just randomly my conversation with my friend like a week prior, about her outing me like came in my mind. I was like, is this about so-and-so? He was like, yeah. And I was like, oh God. And I immediately realized like, oh shoot, she probably said something to someone or whatever. So I just started like confessing the things I wanted to talk to him about that I never had the chance to. I just started like telling him, okay, so I'm assuming it's about this. Yeah, this happened. I wanted to tell you earlier. Oh, and my posture was like, I was embarrassed. I was ashamed. I felt so guilty and like I'd been found out and whatever. And so, I kind of bare my soul and it's humiliating. And he goes, well, Mike, you can see how it feels like you've been lying to me all year. And I was like, what? And I'm sitting here thinking like, how do I respond? Because I don't want to like combat him. I don't want to come across as rebellious or like I'm an orphan, right? I want to come across offended. Like there's all these things that you get like easily tagged in that environment with that invalidate anything you have to say at that point. So I'm trying not to like come across as one of those illegal postures, right? But also like, I'm like, I did not lie to you. Like, that's not true. So I'm trying to figure out how do I respond to this leader who's like saying some pretty like incriminating things against me without breaking the rules, right? So I was like, wow, I'm sorry that it feels like that. That's definitely not my intention. That was not how, like what I was trying to do. And he was like, Mike, this is really concerning. I need to talk to leadership about this. Can you hang around here for a little bit? I'm going to go talk to them and we'll meet up again. I was like, okay. So on the way down the stairs, I still cringe remembering this. I told him, hey, whatever you guys decide needs to happen, I'm going to go with it. I'm going to just yield to your decision. Right. He was like, thanks. And then went to the meeting. And 40 minutes later, he calls me back in. The head of second year is in the room this time. And my pastor tries to like tell me what's about to happen. And it's not clear and he's not doing it well. So the head guy steps in. He's like, Mike, here's the deal. We have two components of what we expect from our students. There's the academic side, which you pass with flying colors, and then there's the character side. And based on what's happening here, we expect our students to represent themselves, to seek out what they need, to get their needs met, to, you know, like pull on whatever they need in the environment to like address what's going on in their process. You've not done that. Based on how you've participated this year, we don't feel like we can graduate you. And at that point I was like, oh, what? I'm about to not graduate? The graduation ceremony was in 5 hours. I was like, is this a joke? Like, what's happening? I was like, I just kind of like blacked out for a second. I'm like, I don't know what we're talking about anymore. You know, like this is so bizarre. And I also feel like this big and like so uninformed about what's going on here. So basically they end up telling me that they care about me. They love me. They want to see me on a purity plan. They want to help me support me in getting the help that I need. Right. So I got to go to the inner healing ministry get help from a certain person in that place. I'm going to go to the men's purity group and like be part of the men's sexual purity group and like kind of participate in like confessing my sins there and like getting reparative therapy basically. And then there was counseling that I was going to get to step into and whatever. So then they would follow up with me after I've gone through these steps and see where I was. And we would just go from there. And I was like, okay, great. I'll do all of that.
But how did you feel at that point? Because like even every time you say like the ministry, I feel like this is like a terribly dark Harry Potter movie. so like at that point when you're like that, you know you're gay, you know that like these purity things, or maybe you didn't know that they weren't going to do anything. But how did you feel that going into that process?
Listen, I knew they weren't going to do anything, but in an environment like that, with that kind of perspective and worldview, there's always the who knows what God could do, right? So I knew, like, nothing ever in my life had ever influenced or adjusted my sexual attraction. Nothing had ever, no matter what I'd tried. And I had gotten a couple of random side books in the past that I would like check out by myself. Like no one could know that I was reading them. I literally had like secret places in my room that I would hide these books that were going to help me not be gay. I'd talked to a couple different people. I'd heard different ministries. Like nothing had ever shifted or impacted me in that area. I knew like nothing was going to change this on a human level, but God could do anything, right? So there's always this like offshoot chance that something supernatural and radical could happen. So I went into the inner healing ministry experience with like, listen, I mean, I was terrified. I was really uncomfortable. I didn't know what to expect, but I was like, listen, if I can get healed or changed here, like I'm open. I would love that. That'd be amazing. I don't think that's what's going to happen, but I'm open. Like who knows? Maybe this person is whatever. So I had 3 sessions with him. It was like 3 different hour-long, at least, sessions. And by the third one, he was like, yeah, Mike, we're good. We're done. And I was like, what? We are not done. Nothing has happened. Like, I am the same person I was when I showed up here. What are you talking about? He's like, we've explored everything. Nothing's wrong with you. Like, you're good. I'm like, I didn't say this to him, but I was so angry because inside I was like, bro, I'm still gay. What do you mean nothing's wrong with me? Nothing changed. Like you did. What did you do?
Anyway, and so I'm laughing because this is so absurd, and I think you seem like pretty far removed from it now. But like, there's just so many like even jokes to make it. Like, what's he doing? There's like a poster of Margot Robbie behind him. He's like, so, what do you think? Anything? Come on, there's got to be something. Like, look at her.
My gosh, yeah,
like,
totally.
And so, like, at what point after that, like, horrific experience, were you able to, like, let go